Hello, I'm Dick.
And I'm Eric, and we're the Annuity Guys.
Well, Eric, we've been on this subject before.
Yes, we have. Market-free hybrid annuities.
Well, there's a lot of new stuff going on, and that's part of the reason, folks, why we want to talk to you today about hybrid annuities and market-free hybrid annuities. What is a market-free hybrid annuity, Eric?
Well, as I say, the market-free aspect is, of course, when we talk about annuities, the first and foremost thing you have to realize they're not in the market. So even when you hear these things that on a fixed indexed annuity that would have some kind of indexing component where you get some of the gains perhaps from a gain in the index, which is typically then people associate with the market, well, guess what? You may be affiliated with that index, but you're not actually invested in the market. So you are market free. So
free of all market risk. And that's very different than the variable annuity.
Yes.
And that is the differentiating factor of market-free. It's not a variable annuity.
Right.
But it has some aspects that give folks some greater potential for earnings and growth and to make more interest on their annuities.
Right. I mean, everybody likes the idea of having a fixed guaranteed rate that's high. Well, guess what? In today's rate environment, the fixed guarantee is not so high.
That's true.
So how can we do better than some of those guaranteed numbers? Well, it's taking that indexing potential. No risk of loss.
Correct.
But perhaps higher than typical or these fixed gains.
Well, and the way they do this, and Eric, we've talked about this a lot, is that there's an index out there. There's many different indexes. Could be the Standard & Poor's, the Dow Jones. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. The Barclays, bond indexes, and take and tie the interest rate growth to those indexes so that it's not invested in the index, but it does get the advantage when that index increases of getting a higher credited interest rate. So you do have that upside potential with no downside risk.
Right. And this is where everybody always starts to get confused with hybrid style annuities. And typically the fixed index is probably the most popular style of these hybrid.
It is.
Because when you start then looking at the moving parts of what comes into play with a fixed indexed annuity, you're looking at the cap rates, the participation rates, the spreads, and all these things make people, their heads kind of start to explode.
Get a little confused real quick.
And they say, if it's this confusing, I don't know if I can do it.
Well, and that's where a lot of times, when folks get into investments, Eric, they're looking at mutual funds and ETFs, that type of thing, and then they start to look at a prospectus, and they're like, oh my goodness, So
at age 252,
right.
253.
And so anytime you're in a financial vehicle that's going to do anything meaningful for you, chances are there's some things that you have to learn, and it may seem a bit complex, but yet the actual concept and how it works are pretty simple.
Yeah, and that's what it's the very nice thing. Wouldn't it be nice to have gains without ever having to worry about having losses? And that's a big deal. That's the simplistic statement of explaining a indexed annuities. You have the potential for gains, and then they lock in, and you don't go backwards.
Right. So that anything that you do pick up along the way in terms of growth, you can never lose it, which is completely different than market instruments. That are truly securities.
Exactly.
And then you add to that the contractual guarantees. And this is, again, a differentiating factor with an annuity because they have contractual income guarantees. They have contractual principal guarantees. And these can make a big difference when you're planning your retirement.
Right. And this is where we talk about, you've heard us talk about annuitization. Any annuity can be annuitized to turn on income, any income stream, lifetime income, or whatever that would be. Now, these hybrid style, we always talk about the income rider being that income guarantee. So you can guarantee lifetime income just based off of that income rider without having to annuitize.
Correct.
And that's really what turns a fixed indexed annuity into a hybrid style, because you have that lifetime income guarantee without having to give up the principal to the insurance company and annuitize it.
Right. Well, and that is one of the big advantages, aspects of a hybrid annuity, market-free hybrid annuities, is that you can still control the principal even though you have a lifetime income. And there is another hybrid that we've talked about quite a bit. It's also considered a market-free hybrid annuity, but it's a hybrid immediate annuity.
Right.
And they're not as popular. They're kind of new on the scene, but they've answered some real income needs.
Yeah, they give some liquidity provisions too, and that is more of a base of an immediate annuity rather than a fixed indexed annuity as we've been discussing.
More like annuitization.
Exactly. So it's you really are annuitizing your principal. The difference is you're getting some liquidity provisions, so if something does change in your life and that lifetime income need and I don't want to say goes away because I don't think, but you for some reason you need to pull out more of your lump sum than your income.
You can get your hands back on the principal, the initial premium that you put into that
or
annuity,
at least a portion of it.
Right. They use a commutation fee and different things to come up with that formula.
Right.
So Eric, when we're looking at these hybrid market-free annuities.
Well, I was going to say, we got to get to probably the most exciting thing that's probably happening with these hybrid style, the market-free aspect, and that's some of the innovation that's happening right now.
I agree.
The best thing that I see happening is the simplification of some of these fixed indexed annuities, because a lot of times when you got too many moving parts, the caps, the fees, and
it's just hard to understand. Even if it's good, you're not sure.
We're seeing a lot more of these kind of proprietary indexes which come in, and they're uncapped. And so you're taking that cap rate and you throw it away. I love that. When you can throw away a cap rate and have an uncapped index.
Well, yet we're not talking about completely, unlimited on the upside.
Right.
Because there are some, maybe a spread or something like that. But it's much easier to understand.
And you've got indexes that are not going to be just, necessarily the S&P, but there are some of those.
Right.
It's having something that it basically has somewhat of a limiting factor. So you're never going to get exactly what the more popular index is getting.
Or what the full market would return if you were taking all the market risk.
Right. But it's simple to understand when you can actually plug an index in, look at what it grew by, and have point A to point B and know exactly what you're going to get. Now, we have to bring in the spread aspect because we've seen a lot of these uncapped indexes have a spread fee, which means whether the first 1 or 2% is paid out that's the limiting factor. That's what the company's going to keep for their contribution to giving you this uncapped index. You're going to pay a spread fee, but you only pay that if there's a gain in the index.
That's right.
And I like that kind of shared pain.
Yes.
So if it's a zero, guess what? It's a zero for them. It's a zero for you.
Right.
But you don't go backwards.
Exactly. And another exciting thing, Eric, that's a part of these newer products is there's a lot more inflation hedging. There's some cost of living adjustments that are added to these income riders.
Yeah, we're giving cola a whole new name. Pepsi, Coke, you're gone. Welcome to the world of the hybrid market-free annuity. We got the whole new cola.
So when we're doing these searches for colas, annuities are going to be popping up everywhere. But
cost of living adjustments.
But it is true, and this can make a big difference for folks.
Yes. Yeah. Well, obviously, as you're living longer and longer in retirement, we all know the cost of bread 30 years ago is not the same as it is today.
Yes.
And the same thing is going to be true for you in retirement. In all likelihood, you're going to be around for 30 years.
Right.
You've got to still be able to buy that loaf of bread.
Right.
And we have to make sure that your income is increasing. And so giving something there, whether it be laddering annuities or laddering structures, or having something that has a cost of living adjustment built in, it
has to be considered in all types of retirement planning and retirement income planning.
Very powerful.
Yes.
The other innovation we're starting to see is annuity companies are giving you money back to you quicker. You're starting to see the longer you hold an annuity, the increasing in payout percentages. So there's lots of cool innovation that's happening with these market-free hybrid style annuities.
I do think that that's one aspect that we do need to touch on yet, and that is the deferral aspect.
Yes.
We talked about the immediate hybrid annuity, which simply means that if you turn your income on right away, you're more likely to get a higher payout from an immediate hybrid annuity.
Right.
But for deferral, those folks that need to defer out there 4, 5, 10, 15 years before they actually turn their income on, there are some really good things about deferral of the market-free hybrid annuity. And, anywhere from a 5 to even clear up to maybe an 8% deferral rate that will guarantee that by the time you get to a certain point, your retirement income is going to have grown dramatically.
Right. And we have, as you've heard us talk about, and I fondly call it the funny money bucket, those ledger guaranteed growth numbers where you're getting, maybe 6-7% growth every year compounded on the ledger account number that you'll be used for future income.
Yes.
And then we have these other new style that are kind of saying, guess what? It's your cash. We're going to maybe give you some other benefits associated.
Which has been pretty exciting, and that's part of what we've been talking about here is those.
It's the balance then of the guaranteed versus the cash potential, and those kind of weighing against each other. But it's neat what we've got going on in the industry.
So Eric, should folks for their retirement be considering market-free hybrid annuities?
Dick, I think you'd be silly if you didn't.